Alison Brie back on the podcast. I feel like the last time, what's so strange is the time dilation.
Yeah.
Because I think the last time I saw you in person was like pre-pandemic.
15 years ago.
But that's what's happening now is that you see people, you're like, I think it's been like 6 or 7 months. You're like, nah, it's been like 7 years since I saw you in person.
It's everybody doing the 2016, 2026 photo thing. Have you seen that trend?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And you're like, 2016.
That was just.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
But I'm.
How is that? Because that would mean that I'm.
I gotta go. I'm getting a phone call. I have to go. I lost my voice and I'm getting a phone call. It's terrible timing to be talking about my age.
I'm rapidly aging like the guys who looked into the Ark at the end of Raiders.
Yeah, so I do feel like I just saw you. We were at your house playing with the pinball machine.
Playing with pinball machines.
I had a perm. I was doing glow.
You were doing glow at the time. Yeah, you were doing glow.
I didn't just have a perm for fun.
What? But they're fun.
They are fun.
My stepdad in 1985 had, I loved him to pieces. He was the sweetest man. He had a perm mullet. So it was like a little longer in the back and permed.
The back was permed and the top was straight? Or the reverse. I want one or the other. Top
a reverse mullet.
Straight in the back. My God.
I think maybe it was a little wavier on top, but the majority of the perm lived in the curtains.
That sounds
in the back. It
nice.
was and full mustache too. I mean, like so 1985. But like now, am I going to look at this? This is just like a plain black sweater. Am I going to look at this in 20 years and be like, what was I doing?
I could find things to critique about.
Okay.
Both of our outfits. Both of our outfits, I said.
Oh, that's right. I mean,
course corrected mid-sentence.
That was really nice. But I mean, I'm going to start with yours.
And work backwards.
There may not be time to get to mine, but we've got some.
I just watched this movie. I shouldn't be I just watched this movie, Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. Have you heard of this?
Let's go to a clip. No, we don't have a clip. It would be great if we had that capability. We don't.
These guys in this movie go back in time to 2008, and these two guys have been making this show for a long time, so they have footage of themselves in 2008. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's 2008, and there's all this footage of people walking down the street. I guess 2008 is a long time ago, but
it's almost 20 years ago.
Oh my God, how dare you?
That hurts. Yeah, I know.
How could you do this to me?
I was middle-aged back then. How do you think I feel now?
You're right, and that was really like the jeans were a different shape, the shirts were really long. Immediately the fashion, I was like, oh God.
Oh my God, are you kidding? 2008?
2008 is not
like True Religion, flared, like
low rise and tight. Is that possible that we were doing that to
Not only possible, it was what happened.
It was what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to 1985 again, people were wearing shoulder pads and they were like, the profile on this is solid.
I feel like shoulder pads have come back around. Fashion is cyclical.
It is. It is,
and that's my time. Thank you.
This was great. Thank you for being here. So 2008. So you were talking about Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you gotta watch it. It's one of the most endearing pieces of art I've ever seen.
It's funny to me now when I see people wearing Nirvana shirts, I identify with it as like, oh, that's a Nirvana shirt. But then you realize like, oh, these people were born 20, like that's like me wearing like a Bill Haley in the Comets shirt when I was a kid.
I don't know who that is.
It's, we're going to rock around the clock tonight.
Oh, I know who that is.
Yeah. Have you ever have you heard of the short form documentary series from the 70s called Happy Days?
Yes.
Okay, so that was they did the theme song. Yeah.
And you thought I'll wear their shirts.
I'm gonna wear the Bill Haley and the Comets shirt and be like, I'm cool. This is retro.
Well, fashion is cyclical.
It is very cyclical.
So.
I watched Together recently, which so my wife and I are huge horror fans.
Are you?
And
of course.
Lydia even more so than I am.
Yeah.
But it's been harder lately with the 4-year-old because by the time she goes to bed, we're just like,
She's not into horror.
she's not. But well, we have all these horror movie props around our house, which I think you've seen.
Totally. Yes. I was like, you are? And then I was like, wait, I've been to your house. This tracks.
So
Yeah.
we have this werewolf head that Lydia got in an auction. It was in The Howling.
Nice.
It's an actual, and Dimity would go up to it and just go boop, like right on its nose. So
she's like been staring at a scary howling head. Like when she sees her first horror movie,
yeah,
she's going to be cool with it.
But we got to start with Goosebumps first.
Totally.
You start with Goosebumps, and then you work your way. Together is probably not going to be her jam.
Did you ever read scary stories to tell in the dark? That's more a my generation thing.
You kids and your scary stories to tell in the dark.
I feel like that was my intro to horror when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
It was like stories like the girl with the green ribbon on her neck.
Oh,
and then you discover she's headless, or like the hook on the edge of the
car. Yeah.
It was all that stuff. But they had actually really gory, scary drawings, like pencil drawings.
Okay.
And that's what I remember the most, like reading it before bed and then thinking someone with that hook was gonna like come in my window. Or the woman with the spiders, they like hatch on her face.
These are great because these are all the stories like when I was growing up, these viral stories were somehow pervasive with no connective social
book.
media.
Yeah.
With no book.
No literature.
That's right. And every town had a version. It's like, how were these stories disseminating across these same stories of the hook on the roof?
Totally.
And so is that where because you write a lot of the stuff that you do. Is that where that love of kind of like horror, psychological horror came in?
Interesting. I think so. I mean, I think if my relationship with horror has been a real roller coaster ride.
It's a real up and down horror.
But truly, because I think about that, being into Goosebumps, all the original Goosebumps books, and like, and then as a teenager, being really into horror. That was such a pastime, isn't it? For most teens, it feels exciting to just watch anything edgy.
Yeah.
Like, because also horror is like, there's boobs and like,
but also like people your age, like essentially your age, like doing stuff like that was sort of our.
And it's gross. It's like shocking, and it's fun with a group of people, or like if you're on a date.
Yeah.
Right. There's an exciting element to it, and movies like Blair Witch Project were coming out, like really scary, but then also watching like The Exorcist. So I always love that stuff. Then I feel like in my 20s, living alone for the first time, I was not very into horror. I was like, I'm a little too afraid. This is not.
Blair Witch was, I saw Blair Witch in the most perfect way, which was someone gave me a blank videotape before it came out.
Like The Ring.
Yes, but it was like
I'm dipping into other
and the
franchises.
phone rang and someone was like 7 days and I died. Yeah. Yeah, I'm dead. Sorry, but I saw it in the most perfect like IRL viral way, which was someone handed me a blank videotape and they're like, "This movie's really messed up." And found footage, they really kind of defined that genre. So I was like, "Is this real? What is this?"
That's super scary. Oh, I saw it in the theater opening weekend and like had parked at my boyfriend's house, and we like drove back to his house, and I was like, "Follow me in your car back to my house. Like you drive home alone." I was so scared, and we all thought it was real.
Yeah.
Dave and I rewatched that recently, and it's so good still. It really holds up because it's all about the sound design. Almost nothing scary happens in it.
Oh, your glasses were sliding down your. Yep, perfect. Pardon me.
But truly, you don't see a lot of scary stuff in that movie at all until that like final image we all remember of the kid standing in the corner. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler. Listen, if someone hasn't seen Blair Witch yet, they probably wasn't on their to-do list.
But anyway, back to my journey, my horror journey.
My horror journey with Alison Brie.
Like Dave is a huge horror fan, and then he got me back. He roped me back into horror, and he would curate the best horror movies. And I feel like horror movies, I was about to say they get better and better, but there's so many good old ones. But just like, talk about a genre that's constantly sort of reinventing itself. And like, so then there was a period of time where he just would curate everything, and it would be like, is the artistry worth the scare?
Mm-hmm.
So something like It Follows or Hereditary, he'd be like, yes, you should watch it. But we'd often be like, lights on, Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
I will watch it. Or in the theater. That's why horror movies are fun to see in the theater, because you're like, they can't get me in here.
But also like
surrounded by people.
the
Except
energy,
Scream 2.
except Scream 2. Yeah.
Obviously.
They can get you.
They can get you in there.
But also the energy of, well, the first horror
so
movie,
fun.
the first horror movie I ever saw was Phantasm. And
I don't know if I've ever seen that.
okay, it's really creepy, and it takes I saw it in the most kind of imprinting way that you can see something in your young life, which was it was in the 70s,
Yeah.
and my parents were out for the night. It was Halloween night, and there was a babysitter over. I was probably like 6 or 7.
Oh my God.
And HBO was like a brand new thing,
Yeah.
and so it was just on, and all the lights were off, and that movie, it's an odd movie because there's like some interdimensional aliens, I think, and then there's this silver flying ball that zzz, and like drills into. Then it takes place in a mausoleum, so it's just like.
Should I watch it?
I
Would
don't
you
know.
still
Have you
recommend
guys? Do you guys know Phantasm?
Yeah.
Does it hold? I haven't seen it in
Who
a long
directed
time.
it? Is it like?
It's.
know,
I mean,
one of the-
I would say it's definitely one of the. Kind of seminal horror pillars
Oh.
because they made a few of them.
Oh.
But one the franchise hasn't been revisited in a while, I don't think. But it's really this flying silver ball like drills into people's heads and like spits all the blood and brain matter out. And when you're 6 or 7 years old, it's like I'm surprised I ever watched a horror movie again.
Yeah, totally.
After that, but that was
Yeah.
Phantasm was my entry level.
I don't know if I remember the first one I ever watched. I remember The Exorcist was like a prominent early one that really scared. To this day, I'm always like, it's the scariest horror movie. And
It's
Dave is
terrifying.
like, it's very scary, but there are scarier. Poltergeist is another one in that genre that like I remember watching it as a kid. I bet that was one of the first ones I ever watched because I remember it being so scary.
Yeah.
The tree, like, and then, I mean, I grew up in LA, so it's not like we get tons of thunder and lightning storms, but that was a thing I would think about. Like, I'd be like, I have to count like they're counting between the thunder and the lightning and it gets
Yes.
shorter and shorter. And then the tree is like, and then you watch it now and you're like, it's a little cartoony.
I remember being so
Don't laugh. I meant that complimentary.
yeah.
Don't come for me, Poltergeist stands. I still love the movie, but I watched it now and I go, I see how that was scary for me as a kid. It doesn't scare me as much.
Yes, exactly. Because the guy peeling his face off was like so scary when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and now it's
You're like, I respect the 70s artistry of
yes,
this.
yes. And Poltergeist kind of mainstreamed horror to a degree
Sure.
because that was more of a mainstream movie.
Yeah.
and the rest of the stuff that we were watching were just like Cinemax Friday night horror.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're kind of re-expressing some of that now with your writing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, so to continue the progression, of my
Yes.
relationship,
My
with
horror journey.
my horror journey. I feel like Dave sucked me in, and now it's just my favorite genre. And we're so excited to watch all new horror movies, and the stuff I write gets progressively more horror,
Yeah.
bending. And like, I'm just finishing a script right now with a new writing partner, and like, it's so much. I'm just like, should the tooth come out of the mouth and stick in his face? Like, it's like so fun to get into that, but also with a comedy bent to it as well. I think
because
my sensibilities.
Together has a lot of like there's a lot of really great like, oh, I bet that was so fun to
Totally.
write and shoot.
Well, we didn't write that. It's written and directed by Michael Shanks, an Australian director. This is his feature directorial debut. And it was all like, the script was so good in that way of towing that line of like, the set pieces were great and the gore seemed great and very skin crawly, and then subtle comedy throughout. But we had all these conversations about this as we went into marketing the movie, where it was like, he was very firmly like, this is a horror movie that is funny sometimes.
Yeah.
This is not a horror comedy.
Right.
Like, this is not Scary Movie 4.
Right.
Which I feel like is an important distinction.
Right. Yeah, because the thing for people who aren't really familiar with horror, they just think of it as one thing.
Yes.
And horror has so many like subtle sub-genres and styles.
Well, even with Together, we were like, this is body horror.
Absolutely.
And everybody was like, body horror? I mean, we were lucky because a year before Together came out, The Substance came out
Yeah.
and reintroduced the term body horror to everybody since Cronenberg, basically.
Right.
And even Cronenberg, I feel like, has been quoted being like, I don't like that. Don't categorize my work. Like, I'm paraphrasing. Cronenberg's like, I don't like that. He was on a podcast, maybe it was Mark Maron's podcast, saying like, don't categorize my work in this way because it belittles it somehow. You know, he was kind of saying like, people are trying to put it in this box that I didn't commit to that. I'm just making work that is honest and interesting to me.
To be fair, though, they are important distinctions now because of the breadth of things that there are to watch. You do kind of, because there are certain types of horror that you respond to,
for you.
And it's other kinds that you like, and so it's important. I think the distinctions now are necessary, especially because when things autoplay on streaming platforms, you just need to get a sense of like, can I invest my time in this?
Shudder does this well. You guys subscribe to Shudder?
Shudder's amazing at categorizing.
I'm all about plugging other platforms today.
Yep, that's right. That's right. That's okay.
I don't have any projects on there, but it's great.
Shudder's an AMC platform, so it actually.
Oh, good. Okay.
Now it seems too planned. Now
Shudder, great for your.
My horror journey with Alison Brie, now exclusively on Shudder. We just launched a new series. It's great.
I was scrolling through the other day and thought a movie was called like. I was like, oh, there's just a movie called Are You Alone in the House? And then I was like, oh no, that's like, they're just saying, did you want to watch an Are You Alone in the House movie? I was like, that's pretty on the nose, but like, okay.
Oh wait, it's a category.
Yeah, it was a category. What's your take on watching trailers? Because I feel Dave is like, I want to go in as cold as possible, although it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch trailers when they come out and stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like I love to watch trailers, but also once I know I'm in, then I'm like la 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 la.
Yeah, I don't love the autoplay feature. And so sometimes you end up watching trailers.
Yeah,
that
you mean autoplay when you're just scrolling?
Yes.
Like it pauses on an image for 2 seconds and suddenly it's like
two guys take a trip. You're like, I don't want to know this yet, And but obviously they must have a lot of research algorithmically that's what people want, or they wouldn't do it.
But this is how you get addicted. That's why they do it.
That's why they do it. But I don't watch trailers as much anymore for that very reason, that I do like to go in cold too, especially if it's horror. I don't want to know too much.
Totally. But I still want to watch, even if we're right about to watch something and Dave's been like, these 3 people that we trust recommended this. I hear it's great. It was just at this festival. Let's watch it. I'll be like, great. And first, I'm just going to watch 7 seconds of the trailer. I just want a vibe check.
You want to vibe check it?
What vibe I'm stepping into?
Maybe that's the new like bite size for the TikTok generation. They're not trailers anymore. They're just vibe checks.
Vibes. I got a new vibe out.
I got a vibe. Got to do a vibe check on this movie.
The new He-Man vibe.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I mean, the He-Man vibe is I was so excited when I saw that you were doing that. Alison plays Evil Lynn in the Masters of the Universe movie, which is...
Yeah, dude.
I mean, which is very, very, very exciting.
It's so exciting.
I'm so glad
that Masters of the Universe.
Masters of the Universe.
I feel like I shorthand it all the time, being like the He-Man movie. But I want people to know the true title.
That's a fair shorthand.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Although we could call it the Evil Lynn movie.
Oh.
That...
I mean, watch it before you attempt to call it. I don't know if other people register.
Do a vibe check.
Yeah,
do a vibe check.
Do a quick vibe check.
Yeah, Evil Lynn vibe check. Okay.
But from the 3 seconds that I'm in the trailer, I don't know if you would want to fully call it the Evil Lynn movie.
But we don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Have you said you haven't seen it yet?
Nope. So I definitely don't know.
So that's an interesting question. Like, as a performer, would you watch it if they sent it to you before? Do you want to go see it in the theater fresh?
I was literally talking to somebody about this today and talked myself in a full circle where I was like, first I was like, it's fun to watch a movie for the first time at the premiere because it's the best, most excited audience.
Yep.
And that's going to be the best experience watching it.
Yeah.
But then of course you're like, oh, but I have to talk about the movie. And yes, I had an experience shooting the movie and I know what that was like. And I'm well versed in the script and what I did, but maybe I would like to know what the finish, am I still in the movie? Like, maybe I would like to know the finished product, but then it's such a drag if you go to a screening before or like watch a link on your computer. That's not how you're meant to see Masters of the Universe. Like this is in the theater, the scope and scale of this movie is huge. So even to sit in a theater with like 2 of your agents watching the movie, it's such a sad, like you'll be like, seemed good. Did we all like the energy isn't there?
And they're just like rifling through their emails, like, oh yeah, it was great. It was great.
It was great. Oh, you looked good. You looked great.
It was great.
That's what they always go. You look great. And I
Yeah,
go,
your character.
I mean, thank you. That was the first thing I wanted you to tell me.
Who were
But
you?
how
You
was the
were
movie?
you were the
look
lady,
great, kid.
Yeah.
You look great. You always look great.
Hey.
So I don't know. And with something like Masters of the Universe, you know, so much VFX and all of that stuff, which is getting finished. So I want to wait as long as possible to see it so everything's done.
Oh yeah. Because if
know?
you see an early cut, it's like effects go right here.
Yeah,
And
totally.
It's like a guy's just holding up a cardboard broadsword. By the power of Grayskull, and then the battle cat's just a guy in a green screen suit,
Just
You're
a
like,
tennis ball.
Yeah.
swinging by. I will say,
which of course the cat would play with.
definitely.
That's what you gotta.
What I will say to their credit on this movie, amazing production design, and they built the sets. Like they really built sets for this. They wouldn't build the entirety of every set, but they built significant portions of all of the sets. So it was not a ton of like following a tennis ball. It was like, I mean, I guess on the set you wouldn't follow a tennis ball, but you know what I mean? Like you're actually like Skeletor's throne was honestly precarious. I had to walk up these steep stairs. You know, it was like, you were like, maybe we could actually make this a little more movie. I'll like act like
Cut
I'm
around
struggling.
some of this stuff, you know. I don't have to.
It was like, it was so cool to see
That's
every
really
day
cool.
getting to set. It wasn't like, you know, I guess I've never shot really a movie of this scale. But I guess I have shot some things where you get to set and there is a green screen and you kind of go like, so what is this going to look like? Like even on Community, sometimes if we were doing some silly bit and you'd go like, what is it going to be? And they'd show you like a little drawing and you'd be like, oh, okay.
Okay, I guess that's.
But this was great because you really didn't have to act it. You'd go in, real fire, torches are burning. Like it was very cool.
What's standing over there? It's a guy with a skull face. You mean Skeletor? Yeah, we'll figure it out. Like, oh, but could we?
I feel like I'm in one scene with a guy wearing a big rig with a tennis ball, and we shot some takes without him first.
Yeah.
And then he came in, and I was like, oh, the tennis ball's so high. In this scene, it's going to look like I'm looking at his chest.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? I was like, uh-oh. But
I mean,
it's not really about me. I'm
but
like background.
it
in that
could be.
scene. No one's like looking at where I'm
It could
looking.
be. I mean, listen, I'm really also excited to see the take on Skeletor.
The Skeletor voice is different than you expect and cooler.
Okay. Hey guys,
Yeah. Hey, I'm cool, Skeletor.
I'm Skeletor
by,
for Gen Alpha, Gen Z crowd. What do you want?
My Skeletor's about to play some smooth jazz. He's like, hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Skeletor here. I'm gonna slip into some easy tunes to let the night slip away.
Yeah, because he doesn't have ears, but he can conduct the sound through the bones in his face.
Oh yeah. There's a large cavity for music to kick around in.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it totally works.
I feel like I do a little voice.
You do?
Yeah, I think so.
Hello, everyone. I'm Evelyn.
I'm Evelyn. Hello.
Wow.
Evelyn. Fancy meeting you here.
You're like, I want to go a little more old school with it. Just like really.
I like start doing the Charleston.
Castle Grayskull.
Yeah.
How many musical numbers in this one?
5 or 6.
5 or 6, yeah. They want to keep it light.
Yeah.
You have one of the most fun careers because.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say roles. I was like, she is the most fun role, but careers, give it to me.
Well, no, seriously, because
oh
it's
my
like,
God, scope out live.
I mean, Trudy Campbell. You get like this you're on like one of the best series in the history of television.
That was a good show.
And then you jump to one of the best comedies in the history of television.
That
It's
was
like
a good show.
you go from Mad
That was
Men
also a good show.
to Community. I think they were maybe running it for a second at the same time.
Yeah.
And then going into this really great film. And then Glow was fantastic.
Glow
and
was
then
so fun.
Jumping into film as also a writer and producer. Is this what you imagine? Are you accomplishing what you imagined, or were you just kind of like, I'll just say yes to the universe and see what happens?
But a little bit of both, I guess. I feel like that it's just impossible to design it, right? So it is a lot of just yes-anding, I guess, and gut feeling, and like, that seems fun to do, and that seems fun to do. I think after doing something, I definitely look for things that are different from whatever the last thing was.
Yeah.
So that's like the first sort of like, well, we just did that. Let's try to do another, but I think it was very lucky to start my career on Mad Men and Community at the same time. It actually kind of confused a lot of people. Like at first I thought it was detrimental because casting directors were like, wait, I thought you were 40 or something based on Mad Men. Like I'm playing a housewife in the way we did our hair, and on Community, I'm playing like a college student.
Yeah.
So people, I think, had some trouble placing me at first, but that was kind of a good thing because there was no like, well, you're definitely this, and this is the thing you do.
It's really fun, especially knowing you, and then and Ham as well, from coming off like such a densely dramatic and beautiful show, and then knowing like these people are also like incredibly funny. And so when the world discovers that, it's just going to unlock like so many doors in the business, which is great.
Thank you. I mean, I feel like the most surprising thing to myself is the writing and producing, and like I'm gearing up to possibly direct my feature directorial debut.
That's fantastic.
Working on that kind of thing, directed a bit on Glow, and like it's those things. Like when I was younger, I always wanted to act, you know, I loved doing theater as a kid and things like that. But I just would not have even imagined, I never pictured myself writing things or creating things in that way. And I always credit, honestly, Glow a lot with that. That was that show. There just were so many women on that show doing every type of job you can do. And it sounds silly to say like it never had occurred to me, but it maybe hadn't to then see so many women doing every facet of a job and go like, oh, maybe I could do some other parts of this too. There were certainly when it came to writing, story ideas I had been thinking about for a decade, but I just was like, but I'm not a writer. I wouldn't really, and I think part of that also I credit to Dave, because I watched him write his directorial debut, The Rental. He co-wrote that with Joe Swanberg. And that was like, it was like I was working on Glow. I was having ideas I wasn't telling anybody about. And then I was watching my husband like so fulfilled every day, taking on this new role and like working with a new person in a different capacity. And he was just coming home so excited every day about a new project. And so I was like, oh, I think if I had I think if I have a writing partner, I could do that. So I've always written things with a writing partner. I wrote a couple films with Jeff Baina and one with Dave. And
it's so much easier that way because you're accountable to someone else. And also it's fun, especially for a comedy person, the back and forth.
You need, and as an actor, I find that it's like, I want to get up and act. Like writing with Dave was so fun because we're both actors, and when we'd play out a scene, we could just be like, is the scene working? Let's give it not like we were sitting there being like, okay, now let's act.
Right.
But you just sit, that sounds so lame. Now let's act the scene.
So instead of saying action, you just go, act.
Act.
1, 2, 3, act.
Oh my God. But I find myself doing it with my current writing partner, Alice Stanley Jr. Like, and she said something the other day. She was like, all the time when I'm writing by myself, I'm like writing in this vacuum. And when I'm writing with you, it's like, we're writing the music and the instrument to play it is also here in the room. And that's sort of like a helpful, let's take this for a spin, which is great. Because I only write stuff also for myself to act in. So
yeah, but that's
do I want to play this part?
There's literally nothing wrong with that. And also it's like you're crafting your own art piece that you know how to live in because you're crafting it.
And to take minutes to go like, is this honest? Like, when I act in other stuff, right? You read scripts and you go like, do people talk like this? Or would someone say that?
Hey,
like
He-Man, what's gives?
Hello, He-Man. I'll smoke another Tuesday on a 1-2. That's that classic expression.
Yeah, people are gonna have a very different idea about what He-Man. I think it's an old-timey 30s musical set in Prohibition.
Yeah. But so it is nice, I think, getting up, working things out, I feel like is part of the creation. Even though I never did improv or anything like that.
We carry a lot of ideas about ourselves through our lives.
Yeah, totally.
And every so often it's good to check in with, do I still feel that way? And because you just kind of set stuff on auto and you set it and forget it. Yeah. And then later on when you question it, you're like, oh, I actually think I could do this other thing, or I may not have this limiting idea that's in my head anymore.
Totally. been thinking about this so much lately because there is a version that you're talking about, which is like, wow, I cracked open a whole other side of like my own creativity and career.
Mhm.
But then there are other things like, just small decisions that we make about like, I don't like this and I do like this.
Mhm.
I feel like some of that stuff you'll carry around forever since you were a teenager.
Yeah.
And then you'll suddenly be like, I don't know, give me that caramel corn. Wait a minute, it's delicious. Like that's
right.
a weird example,
Well,
but
no,
I
but
just
that's
wanted to
that's a great
I wanted
example.
to highlight like on a small scale of it, like for years and years, for 15 years, I didn't eat red meat or pork. And then like 2 years ago, I was like, Dave, I don't call him that. That sounds so weird. I was like, Dave Franco, sir. Excuse me, sir. Can I get your attention? I was like, give me that piece of bacon. I want it. And he was like, no, you don't eat that. What? You're gonna get sick. And I was just like, give it to me. And now I'm like, yeah, I eat bacon sometimes, whatever.
But it was just something.
But do you know what I mean? It was like I
Yes.
held on to it for a long time. No, I don't eat that. And this is a big trait of my personality and it has to go in these things. And when you're on a set, people need to know that. But it's just something like that. Like just these little shifts where you're like, you could be open. We make a lot of decisions about ourselves and some of them are great. You want to define, you should know who you are.
Of course.
It's something that's really fun about my job because you just go to all these different places, you go to all these different cities, countries, and try and inevitably try new things as part of the job and also just from being in a new place,
What is your writing process in terms of like, obviously having another person helps with the sticky points where you're just like, where you just feel like, I got nothing today.
Yeah, totally. Dave and I wrote a movie called Somebody I Used to Know. And that was kind of us being like, what do we want to do next? We had made his film, The Rental, and like, it just was like, let's make a rom-com. We love rom-coms. So it truly was like we started at genre.
Yeah.
What do we like about rom-coms? Like walking around, and then we were in his hometown walking around being like, somebody goes back to their hometown. Like it was organic in that way.
Yeah.
I feel like this current thing I'm writing is like something else that I've been thinking about for 10 years. And it's fun to me we're probably have rewritten it now 12 times. And still there's a scene in it that like when I met with this, my writing partner, Alice, for the first time, I was like, here's kind of the gist of this thing I've had in my head for a long time. And here's one scene, like the specificity of some horror set piece that I'm like, I don't know. No one else has ever responded to it. And she was like, I dig it.
But see, that's great because people can get so frozen if they think that, well, this isn't a fully formed idea, so it's not worth doing. And it's like, yeah,
Totally.
but just started somewhere and then see where it goes.
Something really cool also that happened with Alice on this script and that also happened with Jeff Baina on the first script we wrote together, which was Horse Girl, that we made for Netflix, was like the symbiotic ideas coming together. So like I sat down with Alice, laid out some things, and she was like, oh, this is wild because I've actually been trying to crack a story like this. It's in the same vein. I was like, I have the story figured out, but I don't know what the main crux of these two characters is. And she was like, so I have these two characters. And it's like the idea, and it was under the same umbrella of like theme.
Yeah.
And we just were like, and then if those two characters pop into this movie, with Jeff on Horse Girl, I had wanted to make a movie about my grandmother was schizophrenic and kind of like my examination of like me being afraid of having that in my DNA, and kind of just those sort of concerns, but had some wild other plot line. And Jeff had been trying to convince me that I am a horse girl and like should be a horse girl. And I was like, let's write my idea first and then your idea. And he was like, I think they're the same idea. Like I'm talking about who the character is and you're talking about all the things that are happening to the character.
Right.
And it just was like a beautiful enmeshing of those two ideas.
It's interesting to hear you say like, oh, this thing, there was a history of this in my family. And that's been something, because I think we all have a version of that, whether it's a mental health issue or a physical health issue.
Totally.
Or if just like someone in our family just gets older and weird and you're like, is that going
to
I going to get weird? Am I weird now?
Yeah.
I'm talking to myself out loud. That's kind of weird. Like did the expression of that artistically kind of help dissipate that in a way?
Yes, definitely. Yes. I think yes. And it also was like an interesting process for me to just learn more family history because there were so many stories about my grandmother that I had heard when I was growing up. I never knew her. But I actually got to sit down with my mom and interview her several times and just ask more questions about things from an adult perspective that I
That's
had not
wonderful.
thought about, which was so interesting. And it was like, I got to learn more about my mom also and just get closer with my mom.
That is something that I've read. You know, when my dad was alive, I had him on the podcast. It was much better that way. But in 2012, like I podcasted my dad,
Yeah.
and I was close to my dad, but I did exactly what you're saying, but I had never like gotten to know him in that way.
Yeah.
And it's such a valuable thing to do because you see each other as humans.
There's so much that you take for granted that is knowledge that you have about your parents, but you consumed that knowledge through osmosis.
And they're always up
when
here,
you're
and
a
you're always
kid.
like, you're the kid and they're the parent. Kind of
Yeah.
authority figure.
Yes. And you also feel like you're like, I've known my parent their whole life. And
But
you're like,
you don't know them.
but
You really
also,
don't.
And you didn't even. They had
Yeah.
so much life before you existed. You know?
Yes.
And you didn't even. So then, yes, to come back at it from an adult perspective and kind of go, oh, what about this? At first, it made me maybe more scared. I'd be like, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
But then it just was all so interesting, I guess.
It's a valuable experience and one that I think everyone should have. And especially because in my case, he died the next year. And I just think I'm so thankful that I did that.
Yeah.
Because I still have not, even after all these years, I still haven't been able to listen to it.
Yeah.
Because I think it would just peel me apart like Velcro.
Totally. But you never know. One
But
day
someday.
you'll be like, ooh, let me.
Or I can give it to my daughter someday and be like, this was your grandfather. You never knew him, but this is like a glimpse into who he was.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But now, since everyone has a podcast now, I feel like it's
She's going to be like, ugh, I already feel like I heard something like that.
very,
It's called talking to my dad. You know, I
very,
didn't
very,
listen to talking to my
derivative,
dad.
very derivative. Yeah. But everything that you work on now feels like an exploration of like, oh, this is something this is either interesting to me or something that I want to process or something that I want to explore.
Definitely.
Which is harder when you're an actor for hire because you don't always.
Yeah.
Would you say it's fair to say that you're always trying to find the way in?
I was going to say, yes, that's like you're fitting yourself into the box.
Yeah.
Versus being like, oh, I'll just make the box, it's me shaped.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Since I've been working, there's been this big shift in auditioning, which used to all be in the room.
No, it's
And
like
now
a
it's all
phone.
on a Zoom or it's all self-tape. It's all self-tape. And I have never booked a job off a self-tape. And I just didn't ever have to do it very much. You know what I mean? And now it's like a little bit of both. Like I audition for parts. There are also parts that come my way, or I just write them for myself.
Yes.
And often if something comes my way and they want me to audition, even now I'll be like, I do want to come in and audition, but can I be in the room with humans?
Yes, it's such a. I mean,
And in that
totally
way, I
understand.
think I am better at it. And I'm trying to get better. I think I'm getting better at taping.
It's hard because it's.
There's no feedback.
There's no
There's
feedback.
No feedback.
It's funny that for a medium that people will be viewing, much like your audition would be on a device.
Yes.
The energy of being in a room that process is so artificial
Yes.
that it really is what put me off, like when I quit acting and just wanted to host.
It's
like,
funny
I just can't.
because I have friends who feel the opposite. They're like, I love self-taping. I'm not at the mercy of what's this casting director's energy. Are the producers being weird?
You get to pick your best
Am I
take.
so nervous? Right. They're also like, I could spend 2 hours doing this tape however I want. I have all the time in the world to make it. I'm like, that drives me nuts. Also because I just find I like the interaction. I
Yeah.
also feel like part of what you're selling is not just what's going on tape. It's like, this is what it's like meeting me and working with me.
Yes.
Here, here's how I am as a person. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
Um,
We don't need to read these.
yeah. What is that about? You've
on.
seen some of my stuff. I honestly can think of a couple things from years ago that I put myself on tape for. And then when I saw the thing, I was like, oh my God. Like, I remember putting myself on tape for this comedy. I don't want to say what it was, but I just thought that it was like really broad.
Mhm.
And I came in being like, oh my God, no, tell me. Like, I did a crazy, crazy character. And I was with casting people. And then I watched the movie, and the girl who played this girlfriend was like, oh my God, no way. Like just the most normal. I was like, oh, this isn't like a spoofy. I thought this was like Airplane.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
But see, that's a kind
Not
of
that the character, this makes me sound like a really bad actor, this whole story.
no, it
And
doesn't.
the people in Airplane are taking it seriously. Look, I know comedy.
But that's a different. That's a different
and I'm
style.
good at acting.
That's a different style, though. That is a
I
totally
just thought
different
they
style.
wanted like a spoofy big
Yes.
character for this side character. And to
Yeah.
this day, and it's a movie I love. I'm so glad I didn't get the part. When I watch it now, I'm always like, it's so good. And wow, she's just so subtle. So subtle. No one in the room wanted to be like, now let's do a version that's just like subtle, like a human being.
But you never know that they might have been going in that direction before.
Well, that's what I was like, I'm going to make a big swing.
That's what kind of freaked me out about, because every once in a while I'll go, it'd be really fun just to have like little parts and things.
Yeah.
Just little, like, work for a couple days, come in, do something silly, and then leave. And in the movie, no responsibility really. But then when I think about the audition process, I think I'm gonna have to put myself on tape or on tape.
I know. I say it
tape,
too.
yeah.
Putting it on tape and we're watching it in the VCR.
That's what we're gonna watch it. Then you might get your mama Lime Ricky, and we're gonna watch the.
on the old 1-2s.
But the thing that kind of scares me about it is there's just like recorded footage of me potentially auditioning horribly, and it's like, oh, does that just go out into the world?
Like, just if you put feelers out, people, you know what I'm like. It would be like me.
Yeah,
but
like-
in your movie.
like me, but then just I'll have a different name. You can, I'll be Chris with a
Peter.
K. Yeah, So it always seems fun, but then I just get shy about the audition process.
Yeah, lately I'm like, I'll audition, but I have to be in the room. And then I'm driving there being like, oh my God, I haven't auditioned in so long. It's so nerve wracking, but it is still more fun.
Yeah.
Also, the adrenaline of that, like the nerves, the higher stakes, I think make it better too.
Yeah.
Like you're videoing yourself, you're just kind of like, action. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Or like you're doing it on selfie mode, and then you're just kind of.
You can't do it on selfie mode. No. You can't do it on selfie mode. Are you kidding? I'd only be looking at myself. The scene, it would not look like, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I guess that's
Sorry,
true.
you don't look at yourself when you're talking to people on selfie mode. My eye line to them is always low because I'm just looking right into frame.
That's the one thing that they have to perfect with like zooms and stuff is just like adjusting the eyes to look at the camera.
Yeah, put the picture of me closest to the camera so I could look at myself, but it looks like I'm looking at
Just
the people.
embed the camera in the screen somehow.
Yeah.
That's what you got to
The
do.
camera needs to be more mid-screen
needs to
because
be-
even if you're not looking at yourself, which I was joking about,
Yes.
clearly, even if you are just looking at the other people in the Zoom, you just look like you're,
Well, because eventually they just turn into
looking
phone
down.
calls where you're just like,
yeah.
you can't just stare at a screen infinitely long.
Yeah.
And then it's like you can see.
Doing an audition also on Zoom is funny. Like I've done chemistry reads with people on Zoom, and you're like, I want to, like, how do we, does it look like we're making eye contact? Like, do I look into the lens? But if I look into the camera, I'm actually not, it's hard to have chemistry with the actor.
Because
I'm
really what
not,
you're
like,
acting with
seeing
is a
what they're
device.
Then it's the same as them not being in the room if I'm
Yeah.
looking at the camera. So I have
Yeah.
to then look at the screen. We're both just looking at screens. Like, that's funny.
I want to try.
Like, that's funny. And I know comedy. So,
You're back, but you studied theater in college, yes?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
I feel like you.
but not a lot of comedy.
No, really.
No, I mean, like period comedy. Moliere.
I would have thought because I've known you for a long time. I think you did the podcast like in its earliest days.
Yeah.
And I think you were like in the first line of guests, whoever did this
My
podcast.
God.
And I think even at the time I was surprised. Like I just assumed you had like a sketch improv background.
I love that about you.
I really
I
did.
mean, well, because I worked on Community and that was so well written, and people always think that we improved a lot of that, and we didn't.
Yeah, but you have like a naturally like your rhythm is really like comedic. So
Thank you.
that's why I always assumed that there was comedy training.
You know, I think it's, how do I say this without sounding, I'm like, I think it's just, that I'm funny.
But that really is like just, but that really is.
I guess I was going to say there was like a disconnect when I was younger, like when I was like even in college studying theater, Shakespeare, the classics, Romeo and Juliet, doing really dramatic work. And then with my friends doing bits, always doing bits with friends. But my friends, we were all like dramatic actors in our minds.
Yeah.
And even when I graduated from school, I was like, I will do dramas. Like in my mind, I just was sort of like, that's who I'm going to be when I go act.
Yeah.
But then with other people, bits. So I feel like it took me a minute to connect me as a person and like a knack for having some kind of timing, with like work, and probably community was the thing that did that.
Do you live in your head too much? Do you ever feel like you have to get out of your own way?
No. Bye.
That's a good answer, though.
Yeah, no, I do maybe in life. Honestly, the most in scenarios like this doing podcasts. Like
Really?
guaranteed tonight I'll be like, oh my God, why did I was like talking about my, like, I'm so funny. Like there are things that, but not in my work.
That's
I'm
great.
not an overthinker in my work a ton.
I like to ask that question of everyone because I love to know everyone's answer is a little bit different and it's a little
Yeah.
unique to their personalities as to how they navigate it. Because I just assume that people who watch or listen to the show probably are always like, how do I stop this to get things accomplished?
It's not like that for me. It's not on a constant loop, but I'm just like such a talkative person. I never stop talking. So I'll feel very confident out in public at an event or at a thing or at a podcast, and I'll talk. And I'm an oversharer and I overshare everything. And then at night, in the middle of the night, I'll just be like,
Oh, no.
why did I say that to Ben Stiller? Like, it's like, it will be, things will haunt me later. And I will for years.
And then you probably run into that person. You're like, okay, the last
It's funny
time
that I said that. I know that I said that thing to you last time. Yeah.
And they're like,
A little bit.
What are you talking about?
Of course, because no one's thinking about everything. It's like you have to remind yourself that it's your own ego, and like everyone's thinking about themselves most of the time.
Yeah, and also like any famous person that I ever got like nervous around and just like blathered, I left kind of feeling like, and the best part is they'll never remember me. Like I always kind of feel like I disappear into the crowd. It's like they'll never remember. Anytime I've ever like, there are just a few people that I've met where I was like,
Oh my God. Well, I say Ben Stiller because last year at this party, I had a funny interaction with Ben Stiller where I just wouldn't, and I walked in. The best part about it was I was with a friend. It was after the Oscars, it was an after party. And I was with a friend who knew Ben Stiller. So he was like, let's go say hi to Ben. And in my mind, I was like, just be cool. Don't talk too much. And we walk up and we're introduced. And then my friend's talking to Ben's wife, and Ben and I are standing there. And I go like, so nice to meet you. I'm a big fan. I love Severance. It's such a good show. Wow. I mean, just congrats on it all. Like, it's so exciting. And it's like the best television I've ever watched. And honestly, your career as a director, Reality Bites and Zoolander, like the breadth of it all, like Dan and Mora, like it's like, it's honestly iconic. I was talking about, I actually literally was talking about it earlier tonight while I was in my hair and makeup. So that's so funny. I was just, because you're honestly prolific as a director. And your bit tonight at the Oscars was so funny. It was so funny. It really worked. It was funny. Also, you looked great while you were doing it. And lately, you've been doing podcasts to promote the show, and you've been really funny. You've just been killing it on the podcast. I just want to say, I'm not exaggerating. I covered all of those. I ended with the podcast. You were on Conan. I heard you on Conan. You were also on Mark Maron's podcast. I was like, oh my God. I stopped, and he was like, can you follow me around for the rest of the party? I feel like you're a great hype man. So since then, I've seen him at a couple other events and just been like, it's me, your biggest fan.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Because I've had that same exact thing where it's like, do I keep doing this as a bit?
I'm like, they'll never remember it. I'm like, remember me? And honestly, I'm not sure if he even knows that I'm like a working actor. I might just think like, oh, there's that crazy girl again.
That is so funny. it's so funny to hear you say that. And then you're just like deep diving every time you see him. So what was it like growing up? I know you did a documentary about your parents. So when you were a kid,
it's great. Actually, it's great. He's so lovely.
So
He's
nice.
so lovely and patient with me. And actually, I feel like the second time I saw him, I was like, you were just on another podcast. And then he actually told me a bunch of other cool stories from the podcast. I was like, oh wow, feeding the fan base.
You went all the way back to Reality Bites.
Tell?
That was like 93 or something.
Because I was watching him present. This is so dated now because it wasn't even these Oscars, but last year's Oscars. But I was at home getting ready to go to these after parties, watching the Oscars, and his bit was awesome. It killed. And I was sitting with it being like, you know who doesn't? Ben Stiller doesn't get enough credit for his directing. He is a prolific director.
He's amazing.
Genre to genre.
Yeah, he's amazing. I had almost a very similar conversation with Joel McHale about who you may remember from such shows as Community. And we were talking about, because at the Saturns, there was Tom Cruise was there and he stayed for the whole show.
Wow.
And he did the podcast like, I don't know, 12 years ago or something.
Wow.
And we had a bit at Comic-Con where he sang a piece of a song and I sang and I was moderating the panel and it was this like, and so of course he's at the Saturns and of course I asked Tom to take a photo and he did because he was very kind to everyone. And I didn't think I was nervous, but I just felt like the second you stop someone, this like hourglass goes upside down.
Totally.
And you're like, okay, I got to get all this information in as quickly as possible.
Long, I just wanna,
so you did the podcast like 12 years ago, and I just want to say it was very thought-provoking, and I really appreciated the conversation. And I kind of felt the timer starting to, and he was so nice. And he was like, oh, that's really great. And he was like, well, listen, it was great talking to you. And he said, be well. And all that could come out of my mouth was, you well.
Oh yeah. Oh boy.
Oh, I just like completely showed
Also.
And also with you, just like old Catholic, you know.
He's like, he had already moved on to the next.
But then when he walked away, I was like, the best part is he's not going to remember me in 10 years again. So,
except if it were me, then I'd go up being like, it was me that I said you well. And
remember that? You well?
Like,
you well. Here, I'll say it again.
You well.
Just in case
That's
you.
funny. And you said be well, and I said you well.
To his credit, he stopped and talked to everyone who wanted to talk to him.
Everybody says that
he
about
took
him.
every photo. He was engaged. But it seemed like, oh, he doesn't remember the thing because it was like 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And Joel was like, oh, I had a similar experience with a different very famous actor where we had hung out at something. And then I ran into them and I was like, hey, how's it going? And they were like, oh, do you work here? You know, and it was like that kind of a thing. And I said, that's because to us, these are like trophy moments in our heads.
Yeah.
But to them, there's no possible way they could retain all this information because those are experiences they have nonstop all day long.
Do you do this like, because a pet peeve of mine is people who don't introduce themselves, like reintroduce themselves and remind you where you know them from when you see them after not seeing them for a long time. It drives me crazy.
They're testing you a little bit.
They are. And it's passive aggressive, frankly. And it's like, I'm of two minds. Like, I'm like, I know I should empower myself just to be like, help, get me a little help rather than just pretending to know people.
Right.
Because sometimes also they're tricking you. I've been tricked a couple times and they don't know these people at all. This is why, in an overthinky way, to the point where it maybe sometimes makes other people uncomfortable, I reintroduce. I'm like, Chris, it's Alison Brie. I did the podcast a few years ago. We acted on a thing. Like, Joel, it's Alison Brie from Community.
From Community. We did
all
Community
those years,
together.
Like, I don't want someone wondering at all.
You always want to try to let people off the hook.
Yes.
Well, Alison Brie, I appreciate you. And I'm so delighted and glad that everything is going so wonderfully.
Thank you. I feel the same.
Just your time in Reality Bites and your...
My appearances on podcasts, they're always so good. Yeah.
But they are always good. And I always know that it's going to be fun. Like whatever it is, it's going to be fun.
I feel the same. This was so nice.
Well, please come back. The end.
The end. And we'll, oh boy, that went perfectly as planned.